$90,000 for your brother's business, Dad said, tapping the envelope like a drum. You don't deserve any help. Mom didn't look at me. Be grateful we're honest with you for once. My brother smirked. Try not to embarrass us with your little ambitions. My throat burned, but I nodded because I'd learned that silence is safer than begging. The room smelled like lemon polish and old money. I could hear the clock above the mantel chewing time into tiny hard bites. I pressed my nails into my palm until crescents bloomed, and I told myself not to cry here. Not where they could see it. Everyone, my name is Marlo Quinn, I'm 27. I was the kid who counted coins in a mason jar under a bed that didn't feel like mine. I was the daughter who did odd jobs, who skipped dinners, who patched holes in a life no one planned to share with me. Do you know what it does to a person to be told they don't deserve help, again and again, by the people who claim to love them? I picked up the empty water glass in front of me, watched one stubborn bubble cling to the rim, and set it down. Thank you for being honest, I said, my voice steady in that careful way you learn after years of walking on emotional eggshells. I won't ask again. Good, Dad said. Focus on something realistic. Administrative work. Maybe a receptionist job. The clock clicked. My brother laughed into his phone, already texting someone about his seed round. Mom started rearranging napkins like the scene was over, like I should exit stage left. In the reflection of the china cabinet, I saw myself. Neat blouse, cheap flats, the tiny coffee stain at my cuff no one else would notice, human, imperfect, still here. I stood. My chair legs whispered against the floor. The house was too bright, the kind of brightness that exposes dust if you dare to look. I didn't say anything dramatic. I didn't slam a door. I just slid my hand into my pocket and felt the cool oval of a key I'd been carrying for a week, silver, scratched, with a black tag that read 4B in a faded hand. No one asked what it unlocked. No one ever did. Outside, the air held that after-rain electricity that makes tiny hairs lift along your arms. I walked to the curb, heart thudding steady, and opened my rideshare app with fingertips that didn't shake. The driver's name popped up. The destination auto-filled, because I'd been checking it every night, like a secret prayer. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I already had my first door. The key turned in that lock 3 days later. Apartment 4B smelled like paint and quiet ambition. A tiny one-bedroom with floors that creaked and walls thin enough to hear someone's laughter through. Still, it was mine. I unpacked my single suitcase, lined up my thrift store dishes, and taped a photo of the ocean above the desk where I planned to build the kind of life no one thought I could. For weeks, I worked double shifts, coffee shop mornings, library evenings, saving every spare dollar like it was proof that I existed. The noise of espresso machines became my background music, the scent of paper and toner my perfume. At night I sketched designs on napkins, teaching myself branding, marketing, every skill the internet could lend for free. Sometimes I'd picture their dining room again, the polished silver, the smug tilt of my brother's smile, and it would light something dangerous in my chest. Not hate exactly, more like hunger wrapped in calm. I promised myself one thing, I'd never chase their approval again. A year passed. Clients began finding me through word of mouth. Then one corporate job turned into 3, and by the time I registered my company name, Quinn Creative, I'd earned my first $50,000. I didn't tell anyone. Silence had become my favorite armor. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. Mom. I stared at the screen until it stopped. Then another message. Your brother's business is struggling. Maybe you could lend advice. Advice. From the daughter who didn't deserve help. I typed, busy today. Hope he figures it out. Then deleted it, choosing instead not to reply at all. The world went blissfully quiet again. That night, as rain whispered against the window, I looked at the ocean photo. It had curled at the edges, but still shimmered with promise. I poured cheap wine into a mug, opened my laptop, and signed a contract that would triple my income. For the first time, the silence in that small apartment didn't feel lonely, it felt earned. And somewhere across town, in the house where I'd been told I'd never be enough, the cracks in their certainty had finally begun to show. The cracks turned into echoes. Word spread faster than my brother's ego ever could. His startup, once plastered across local magazines, was unraveling. Investors pulled out, rent was overdue, and the same people who toasted him with champagne now ghosted his calls. Meanwhile, my world was quietly blooming. I'd moved out of 4B into a sunlit apartment downtown, still modest, but with big windows and white curtains that danced in the morning breeze. My laptop lived on the kitchen counter, covered in stickers that said things like, "Do it quietly and watch me." One morning, I received an email from a luxury real estate firm. They'd seen my design work on Instagram. They wanted a full branding package. The kind that paid 5 figures. When I saw the client's address, my chest went still. It was the same neighborhood where my parents lived. I showed up dressed in black slacks, a cream blazer, hair tied back, eyes steady. The receptionist handed me coffee, called me Miss Quinn, and led me to a glass-walled conference room. While I explained logo variations and brand voice strategies, I caught my reflection in the glass and thought, this is the version of me they never imagined existing. A week later, I finalized the project, wired the invoice, and received payment, $75,000. I stared at the zeros for a long minute, then smiled. That night, I drove past my parents' house. Lights glowed from the dining room window. I slowed the car, unseen in the rain. Through the blurred glass, I saw my brother at the table, thinner, angrier. Dad leaned back, shaking his head. Mom pressed her temples like the world itself had betrayed her. I wondered if they still thought I didn't deserve help, or if they were starting to realize I'd never needed it. I rolled the window up, engine humming softly, and whispered, "You can keep your $90,000. I found something better, peace." As I turned the corner, lightning split the sky behind their roof. For the first time, I didn't feel bitterness. I felt distance, clean, beautiful distance. But destiny wasn't done. Because soon, life would invite me back to the same street, this time, in a way none of them could ignore. It started with a call from an unknown number. I was reviewing color palettes for a client when the ringtone sliced through my focus. "Hello." A pause, then my mother's voice, thin, unfamiliar. "Marlo, your brother's been in an accident." The words landed heavy, like stones dropped in water. She didn't cry, didn't ask for help. Just silence, then a brittle, "He's at Mercy General." I sat there for a moment, staring at the soft glow of my computer screen. My first instinct was to hang up. But something, maybe decency, maybe unfinished business, made me grab my keys and drive. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and regret. When I stepped into his room, I almost didn't recognize him. My brother, the family golden boy, now pale, arm in a cast, eyes dim. Mom was there too, clutching a tissue she hadn't used. Dad stood by the window, staring out like a man who couldn't look inward. He looked at me, startled. "You came." I did. My voice was calm, almost detached. No one spoke for a long time. Machines beeped softly. Somewhere, a nurse laughed in the hallway, a cruel contrast to the stillness inside. Mom broke first. His lost most of his business. Investors left after the crash. His trying to recover. Dad added quietly, he could use some advice. There it was again, that familiar script. The assumption that I'd drop everything, fix their chosen son's mistakes, like my existence was just an unpaid service. I took a breath, slow and deep. "I'm sorry he's hurt," I said. "But I'm not his advisor. I'm his sister. And right now, that's all I can be." Dad's jaw tightened. "You've changed." I smiled faintly. That was the point. When I left the hospital, the parking lot lights shimmered across puddles. I looked up, rain clouds bruised the sky, but the air smelled cleaner than it had in years. That night, I donated anonymously to the hospital's recovery fund under my company name. Not for him. For me. Because revenge, I was learning, didn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it meant evolution. But fate had one more storm waiting, one that would make him see everything he'd lost. 3 months later, I received an invitation that shouldn't have existed, embossed gold letters, my family's surname engraved across the top. "Quinn Family Celebration Dinner," it read. I almost laughed. The last time they'd said family, I was being told I didn't deserve a cent. For a week, I ignored it. Then curiosity, that dangerous little ember, got the better of me. I texted Mom, "What's the occasion?" Her reply was cautious, "Your brother is trying again. A small new venture. We'd love for you to come, just to reconnect." Reconnect. The word stung like perfume sprayed on an old wound. Still, I agreed. Not for them, for closure. The restaurant was fancy, candlelit, the kind of place where waiters glide and conversations hush at the sound of silverware. When I walked in, all heads turned. My cream silk blouse and quiet confidence did what money alone never could. It shifted the balance of power without a word. My brother looked tired, edges frayed. Mom smiled too widely, Dad too politely. We exchanged hollow greetings and ordered food that no one tasted. He started talking about his second business, something vague with investors abroad. I knew the tone well, it was the sound of someone performing hope. Then, mid-meal, Mom leaned in. You've done well, Marlo. Maybe you could help your brother get back on his feet. Your family. The fork froze in my hand. I looked at her, really looked. The desperation behind the makeup, the guilt hiding under her pearls. I did get on my feet, I said softly. By walking away from you. Silence spread like spilled wine. Dad cleared his throat. You don't have to be cruel. I'm not, I replied. I'm being fair. When the check came, my brother reached for his wallet, but the waiter gestured toward me. It's already covered, Their faces turned toward me, confusion, disbelief. I stood, slipping my bag over my shoulder. Dinner's on me. Consider it a repayment, for the lesson. Then I walked out into the night air, calm, sharp, infinite. But karma, as I'd soon learn, wasn't done making house calls. A week later, my assistant buzzed me. Marlo, there's a new client inquiry, urgent. He said your name personally was recommended. When she forwarded the email, my stomach tightened. The sender's name, Evan Quinn. My brother. He'd filled out my company's official contact form, professional, polite, almost desperate. Dear Ms. Quinn, I'm seeking rebranding for a small enterprise after financial setbacks. I've heard your firm delivers results. No acknowledgement of who I was to him. No apology. Just business. I stared at the screen, half in disbelief, half in something deeper, pity, maybe. Or closure finally knocking. I didn't respond right away. I read it again that night, in the soft blue light of my office overlooking the city. His words were stripped of ego. That alone told me everything. By morning, I replied as if to any other client. Thank you for reaching out. Please note that my current schedule is at full capacity. I recommend exploring junior consultants within the network. Wishing you success. I added my firm's signature, no emotion, no history. Just professional grace, the kind he'd once mocked me for. An hour later, he replied, understood. Thank you for your time. Just that. The silence afterward felt strangely heavy. But it was peace, not guilt. For the first time, I saw my brother not as a villain, but as a mirror, a version of me that could have existed if I'd kept begging for their approval. 2 months passed. Work flourished. My designs appeared on billboards, in magazines, even an international campaign. When the firm crossed $5 million in valuation, I celebrated alone, barefoot on my balcony with champagne and city lights. And then one evening, while reviewing contracts, I caught sight of headlights slowing outside. A familiar car idled at the curb. Through the window, I saw him, my brother, staring up at the building, phone pressed to his ear. Even from here, I could read his lips. He was crying. And though I couldn't hear it, I knew exactly what he was saying. Why does she have that? For once, I didn't flinch. I just closed the curtains, gently. The next morning, my mother called. No greeting, no pretense. Just a trembling voice wrapped in shame. Marlo, he saw your place last night. He called me crying. Said he couldn't believe what you've built. I stayed quiet, listening to the faint sound of her breathing, the same woman who once told me I'd never be enough. Your father's been worried too, she added softly. He thinks maybe we were unfair. Unfair. That word cracked something inside me, not from pain, but from the sudden realization that I no longer needed to hear it. Mom, I said, voice steady. Do you remember the day you gave him that $90,000? You told me I didn't deserve help. Her silence stretched long. I do, she whispered. We thought you were too emotional. Too uncertain. I almost laughed. Turns out uncertainty teaches survival. She sniffed. We're proud of you, Marlo. Truly. But pride, I realized, means nothing when it comes years too late. I appreciate that, I said calmly. But I'm not coming back. I've made peace with the distance. Before she could reply, I ended the call, gently, respectfully. Then I sat by the window, watching morning light spill across the marble floor, each ray like a reminder of the storms I'd walked through. Later that day, a letter arrived, no return address. Inside was a folded photo, me at 8 years old, missing a front tooth, sitting beside my brother on a park bench. On the back, my father's handwriting, "For what it's worth, you proved us wrong." For a moment, my eyes burned. But not with longing, with release. The kind that feels like exhaling after holding your breath for years. That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I just walked barefoot through my quiet home, every creak in the floor reminding me. This space was built by my own hands, brick by brick, choice by choice. And yet, deep down, I knew the story wasn't finished. One final confrontation still lingered, waiting to end what they started. It happened on a Sunday morning, sunlight pouring through my living room like forgiveness I hadn't asked for. I was watering the ferns near the window when the gate buzzer rang. The voice that followed froze me in place. "Marlo, it's me." My father. I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. I opened the door slowly, bracing for the old power dynamic, the way he used to fill a room like it belonged to him. But this time, he stood smaller, shoulders bent, a quiet man wearing years of regret. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded. The house smelled of jasmine and coffee, not resentment. He looked around, the wide staircase, the glass balcony, the sunlight curling along the floor. "It's beautiful," he said, voice low. "You did this yourself?" "Yes," I said. "Every bit of it." He exhaled, eyes wet. "I used to think success came from help. That money was love. But, you proved it's something else." I watched him trace a finger along the marble countertop like he was touching guilt itself. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope, old, yellowed at the edges. "Your mother wanted you to have this," he said. Inside was a check. $90,000. The same amount they once gave my brother. I smiled faintly, folded it once, and placed it back into his hand. "I don't need it," I whispered. "But thank you for finally offering it." He blinked, unsure. "Then what do you want?" "Nothing," I said. "That's the piece you never taught me to want." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. Then, for the first time in my life, he said, "I'm sorry." When he left, I stood in the doorway, watching him walk back to the car. The world outside shimmered with a quiet kind of victory, not loud, not vengeful, just owned. I turned back inside, sunlight spilling across the framed photo of my younger self. I whispered, "We made it." The ferns swayed gently in the breeze, as if nodding in agreement.